This man will spend 25 years in the Roman army. He'll start on 225 denarii a year, and most of it won't reach him. The army deducts his food, his boots, his armour repairs. A compulsory payment to the burial fund, so somebody will bury him. He'll end up one of the richest men in his province, and he will still be outranked by a 22-year-old who has never seen a battle. 8 rungs. You arrive as a Tiro, a recruit. Nothing. They measure you, check your eyesight, and test whether you can carry 60 pounds 20 miles in 5 hours, and then build a fortified camp before you're allowed to sleep in it. Then you swear the sacramentum, an oath to the emperor himself, and you belong to the army for 25 years. Not employed by it, belong to it. Desertion carried the death penalty. So did falling asleep on watch. Congratulations. Now you're a Miles, a common legionary, 225 denarii a year. Here's what that buys. You live with 7 other men, 1 tent, 1 cooking pot, and collective punishment. If one of them steals, all 8 of you answer for it. You dig, constantly. Every night on campaign, the Legion builds a fortified camp, ditch, rampart, palisade, and tears it down again the next morning. That's the job. The fighting is the rare part, and you cannot legally marry, not for 25 years. Men did it anyway. The army looked away. Their children were illegitimate for a quarter of a century. So the pay is bad, the work is digging, and you can't have. Because of this, rung 3, and your pay doesn't rise at all. An Immunis earns exactly what a legionary earns. Same coin, same 225. What changes is that you stop digging. Surveyors, engineers, medics, armourers, clerks, artillery specialists, men who could do something the army couldn't easily replace and were made immune from fatigue duty in exchange. That's the first real lesson of this ladder. The first promotion isn't paid in money at all. It's paid in not digging a ditch tonight. And now the money moves. The Principalaus drew pay and a half, or double pay. The Optio is the Centurion's second, and his position in battle tells you everything. He stands at the back of the Century, holding a long staff, and his job is to stop men leaving. Sit with that for a second. Others at this level, the signifer, who carries the standard and also runs the unit's savings bank. Soldiers' money was held in the standards because nobody would rob the gods. The tesserarius, who holds the watchword. The cornicen, who signals over the noise. 450 denarii, double pay, and you've stopped being interchangeable. Which matters. A centurion earned around 15 times a common legionary, roughly 3,400 denarii a year, 15 years of a soldier's wages every year. He commands 80 men. He carries a vitis, a vine staff, and he is legally entitled to beat his soldiers with it. There was a centurion, the legions nicknamed Cedo Alterum, bring me another, because he broke his staff across men's backs often enough to need replacements. When the legions mutinied in 14 AD, the soldiers found him first. So the real change at rung 5 isn't the money. You've stopped being a man who can be beaten and become a man who beats. That's what this army was really selling. Not comfort, position. And there was one position 60 centurions in a legion. One of them is Primus Pilus, first spear, senior centurion of the entire legion and the only one who sits in the commander's council of war. Roughly 60 times a legionary's pay, about 13,500 denarii a year. But that's not the number that mattered. When an ordinary soldier was honorably discharged, he got the premia, 3,000 denarii or a plot of farmland. over 13 years of wages in one payment. When a Primus Pilus was discharged, he got around 150,000 denarii, 50 times an ordinary soldier's entire retirement. More than 660 years of a legionary's wages handed over on one afternoon, and with it, enrollment into the equestrian order, the Roman gentry. Our man arrived with nothing. He is leaving as a member of the propertied class, with sons who will never hold a shovel. This Meet the man who outranks him. A legion had 5 narrow-stripe tribunes and 1 Tribunus laticlavius, broad stripe, second in command of 5,000 men. He is usually in his early 20s, often with no military experience at all, because you don't earn this rank, you qualify for it. And notice, the money has changed unit. Soldiers were paid in denarii, property and fortunes were counted in sesterces, 4 sesterces to 1 denarius. To be an equestrian, you needed property worth 400,000 sesterces. That's 100,000 denarii, which is about 440 years of a legionary's wages, not earned, owned, before you ever arrived. Look at the coin. It's stopped being a salary, it's a price of admission. A 45-year-old Primus Pilus, with 25 years of war behind him, took orders from a boy and above him the Legatus legionis, commander of the whole legion, 5,000 men. He's a senator. The senatorial property qualification was 1 million sesterces, 250,000 denarii, 1,100 years of a legionary's pay just to be allowed in the room. He'll hold the post for about 3 years, and he isn't a soldier by trade. He's a politician doing a tour, because military command is a required step on a civilian career ladder, the cursus honorum. For every man below him, this is the summit of a life's work. For him, it's a line on a résumé. But there was a second ladder running alongside this one, and almost nobody talks about it. Every legion had auxiliaries attached to it, non-citizens, recruited from the conquered peoples of the empire. Roughly as many of them as there were legionaries. They were paid less. They wore chainmail instead of plate, carried oval shields instead of rectangular ones, and drew the worst postings on the worst frontiers. And at the end of 25 years, they were not handed a fortune. They were handed citizenship. Roman citizenship, for themselves and for their descendants, issued as a small bronze certificate in 2 folded plates, so a man could carry the proof of it for the rest of his life. Think about what that actually was. 25 years of your life on the worst posting available for worse money, and the payment. So, was it worth it? For a great many men, no. You signed 25 years, and disease killed far more soldiers than battle ever did. A large share of recruits never collected the payment they had served for. But for the ones who did, this was the single greatest engine of social mobility in the ancient world. There was no other institution where a man born with nothing could reach the propertied class in one lifetime. Not trade, not farming, not law. The ladder was real. It was just very long, very slow, and it stopped 1 rung short of the top.